Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for October 4th, 2011. I'm Joe Lynch. Tonight we bring to you another candidate for Somerville Alderman at Large. A native of East Hartford, Connecticut, he was the communications director for former Somerville Mayor Dorothy Kelly Gay, Chief of Staff for the late Senator Charlie Shannon, and currently is the Chief of Staff for State Representative Jay Kaufman. He has worked as a political strategist and campaign manager and has spent many years as an activist and civic activist in this city. He is a graduate of Northeastern University. He and his family have resided in Ward 7 since 2004. It is my pleasure to welcome for his first visit to Greater Somerville, Alderman at Large candidate Sean Fitzgerald. And welcome back to SCAT TV.
Thank you, Joe. Pleasure to be here.
As communications director, you spent some time down here.
I did indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sean has graciously said, "Go ahead, Joe. Do your public service or your personal thing." I forgot last week when I was on the show with Alderman Dennis Sullivan, to thank many people over the recent loss of my mom. As many of you know, she was a native Somervillian, 98 years, born, bred, and raised in the Magoon Square area. And it was astounding to me and my family the number of people who sent cards, who came to the services, who emailed me personally. The folks here at SCAT were terrific. Many members of the media. We just want to send our heartfelt thanks to all of you. I did get a couple of emails from people recently asking me if there was a new addition to the family, because at the services they did see a very pregnant niece of mine who was 8 months pregnant at the time. And I'm happy to report that as the cycle of life goes on, we have a new addition to our family who was born this morning about 4 a.m. And in honor of Mom, her name is Lily Anna. So thank you very much for all of your cards and your thoughts. And best wishes to Liliana's parents and her brother and her sister. Thank you very much, Sean.
Congratulations.
So, I mean, it's the cycle of life, though, isn't it?
Sure
you know? You are no stranger to politics in the city of Somerville.
That's true.
And you are no stranger to politics, period.
That's correct.
So you've spent many years behind the candidate, and now you're a candidate yourself.
That's right.
So the American public in Somerville wants to know, what makes Sean Fitzgerald want to run this time out?
Well, I think I can make a difference in a new capacity running for Alderman at Large. I believe in a strong and vibrant Somerville. I always have, and I think that I want to continue to build upon the success that Somerville has experienced in the last 10, 20 years. We've been increasingly seen as a community that is on the move and a desirable place to live, work, and raise a family, and I want to continue on that success. I believe the Board of Aldermen gives me a great perspective to do that. Short of being mayor, I think that is a great opportunity for me to really make a difference on another level, and that's what I hope to intend.
Now, we know that the mayor's job is not open this year.
That's correct.
But maybe in 2 years, who knows?
No,
I'm not spreading rumors, Joe. I'm just making an observation. So you've got a full plate from now until November 8th. November 8th is the election. And I know that you have said yes, and you and the 6 other candidates will be participating in the Great Debate.
Yes.
The Great Debate is coming up on October 17th down at the Somerville Theater. Sean Fitzgerald, Michael Neonakis, Todd Easton, and the 4 incumbents are all going to be appearing, so watch for more advertising on that. But tonight is Sean Fitzgerald's night. You're going to go door to door, which you've told me you've been
I have just started going door to door, and I'm getting a good response from the people. I've started in my home ward, which is Ward 7, and I've been knocking on doors of voters to talk about my candidacy and ask for one of their 4 votes.
There you go. What's important to the voters? You've talked to many voters. You've been part of the city fabric of the city for many years. What do you see as those kind of top 3 over and above? Let's kind of remove, what's happening nationally with unemployment, with all of the. What's the top 3 things that they're talking to you about now?
Well, I see certainly affordable housing as one of the top concerns. And people think affordable housing, they think, people being able to raise a family and live in Somerville. We have over 50 housing projects in Somerville that are geared primarily for the elderly and the physically challenged, which, as understandably, they should be. And that's a strong priority for the city, and it should continue to be. We don't have enough affordable housing, I think, for families. Families are being priced out of Somerville, and that's a shame because we are not being able to compete with area communities to keep our housing stock affordable, and that's something that I would tend to focus on as a member of the board.
Are Somerville families, Sean, you and I both remember Somerville families were the 5, 6, 7 kids of the old days. That has shrunk over a period of years.
That's right.
And I'm not putting you on the hot seat. Those questions will come later, but I think the average size of the family today is 2.3 kids or 2.6 kids. I don't know how you have a half a kid, but the statistics say the size of the families have shrunk considerably. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be crammed into a 2-bedroom. We still need those family size units.
That's right.
Of 3 and 4 bedroom residences.
That's correct.
So that's what you're talking about in terms of affordability.
I am.
Yeah.
Families just are being priced out of the city, and when they cannot afford to live in Somerville, they won't send their children to school here. They won't contribute to the tax base. They won't patronize the Somerville businesses, and it's a real lost opportunity, and I'd like to see that more of a focus on families having affordable housing.
Yeah. How do we get there in this tough economic time? How do we make Somerville property values more affordable?
Well, I think that there has been different initiatives that have seen the city go out and bond money. I know that we tried to do it when I was in the Kelly Gay administration. We bonded to make the Holmans a city hall annex. I would like to see an affordable housing bond that gears primarily for families, to try to get more stock in, and I think there's areas that certainly we could do that.
Right now, we've got the set aside at 12.5% for certain developments that are over a certain size.
That's right.
Would you be in favor of moving that upwards to, say, 15%?
Well, Cambridge has 15%. I would be in favor of being there because we need to compete with Cambridge. It's our next door neighbor. So
that's right.
I certainly would be in favor of that.
Yep. Development itself. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you're hearing about all the development that's going on in the city, from Assembly Square to Union Square rezoning, to the infill developments. I know up in your area you had 2 or 3 of the infill developments.
That's right.
Up in Ward 7, right along Broadway there.
That's right.
Yeah.
We are looking at developments that need transit-oriented growth. Obviously, Assembly Square is hinged on an Orange Line stop. Union Square's development, poised to take off and be like Davis Square was 20 years ago, is necessitates a Green Line T-stop. So I think transit-oriented development is what we need to have happen here, and that's really, it hinges on that.
Especially with cities as old and as concentrated as Somerville. Cambridge has a plethora of rapid transit stops.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Cambridge is experiencing a problem now where companies that were locating in Cambridge because of the attractiveness are now being priced out of Cambridge and are moving out. And Somerville will be poised to pick some of that development up. I know Assembly Square was seen as a possible alternative hub for life science and biotech that you see thriving now in the Kendall Square area. And those rents are now stable, but they are going to go up. And if Assembly Square is developed to its capacity, we could get some of that development.
Mm-hmm. You think we'll be ready?
It certainly depends on the Orange Line T-stop, and it's certainly more promising now than what we're seeing with the Green Line. So I think we're moving along that line. But you look, that's arguably the last frontier of development in Somerville. So it's been 10 years in the making just to get it to this point, and the mayor has done a great job moving that so that we have some anchor in there, but it's certainly office and mixed use is dependent upon that T-stop.
Alderman at large. A ward alderman, I think a lot of people in the city understand what the role is. My sidewalk panel is lifting because of a city tree. Can you get it fixed? The trash collection is late. Can you make sure they're here on time? The nuts and bolts of being a ward alderman. Alderman at large is slightly different.
Yes.
In its capacity. Why don't you give the folks at home what your interpretation of the alderman at large and what they can actually do.
Well, having 11 members of the Board of Aldermen, 7 wards, I think those 7 wards, understandably so, fight for their constituency and for their ward. I think it's a good thing that you have 4 at-large aldermen that represent the entire city. So if something is good for Ward 7, but it might not necessarily be good for the city at large, an at-large alderman would bring that perspective to the board and be able to think of the city as a whole.
There's some suggestion that at some point in the future the city will have to take a long, hard look at the charter. The mayor tried that about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Michael Capuano, when he was mayor, tried to get some changes made to the city charter. Do you think we still need to operate with 7 aldermen from the wards and then 4 aldermen at large, or do we need to expand it? Do we need to reduce it?
I think the system works well now. It's just you would want to have an aldermanic body that maybe was looking more of forward-thinking and legislating as opposed to reacting.
Reacting.
Yeah, I think it's more of a reacting body, and I think that comes maybe with time.
Yep. You touched on the Green Line. The Green Line is a pivot point for this community. If it comes in 2 years, I think you'll see dancing in the streets. If it comes,
At the very least.
if it comes in 5 years, I think you'll see maybe some slow swing dancing. At the rate that it's going now, it doesn't look like it's going to arrive until sometime between 2018 and 2020. That's what other pundits are saying. This pundit happens to think that it's not going to hit even 2020, but that's my opinion. If the Green Line does not come, what kind of challenges is this city going to face between now and 2020? That's 8 years away, almost 9 years away.
Well, I remember from my experience in the mayor's office when, even though I was the communications director, I was heavily involved in issues that needed to be brought to the public. And certainly development was one of them. And I know that the mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development plans out 3 to 5 years on projects, and they plan out under the assumption that certain things are going to happen. And I'm sure they had to go back to the drawing board several times when they were designing what the new Union Square would be, because the T-stop was delayed. And it's really tough to plan when you don't really have a set fixed date. And I think that the mayor pressing forward with a lawsuit is the right thing. There's nothing to lose on that. The city's been, frankly, lied to too many times, and I think that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, can you just comment on it, Sean? There is the flip side, flip side argument that says, well, why should we, excuse me, why should we spend all that money on a lawsuit? If it's only going to if it's going to happen in 2020, why should we spend all that money anyway?
Well, there are certain examples of communities that have spent the money and that have seen results.
They've been successful.
In Lexington, where my boss represents, there was a community that Senator Havern from Arlington started to try to get sound barriers up. And it was a big issue for communities. Route 2 and 128. There are some houses, Joe, on 128 where this is their backyard and 128 is right where your wall is, literally 5 feet away. And it's a huge quality of life, it's a public safety concern, and it's a public health concern because those cars are going by, they're idling there at rush hour, and the city banded together and pressed a 10-year lawsuit and got the sound barriers and recouped their money back.
There you go. So there is something to be said for having smart lawyers.
That's right.
Let's hope so. So development in general, it's a double-edged sword here in the city. The more development you have, the higher the home prices go. The higher the home prices go, the more people are priced out. Are we moving in the right direction? There are 2 arguments, one pro, one con. The first argument goes, well, we have so much polluted industrial land that it's good for it to be cleaned up and to be utilized again for X, whether it's commercial development or residential development. We had a very large one in my own neighborhood that many people worked on called the Max Pack.
Sure.
Certain people did not want 200 additional units of housing coming into the middle of a densely packed neighborhood, but predicated on the fact that it would be a transit-oriented development, it seemed good to us. Now, because of economic times, they're going to be rentals instead of owner-occupied, and that has opened to altogether other different can of worms. But in terms of the development that's happening, do you think that we're going to run out of developable space in the city before we actually get a good, affordable housing plan in place?
I don't. I think there's many areas that could be utilized and reused and taken, their former use taken out, because many of the Somerville businesses were manufacturing businesses, and that base just isn't there anymore. I think, especially in the Kiley Barrel area and Ward 2, there are many of those former industrial uses that are not prevalent anymore, and they could be changed and sought after office space and mixed use, which would bring in commercial tax revenue, which would lower the homeowner tax base.
Responsiveness of the current alderman at large. Here comes the hot seat part of it. You're running for one of 4 seats. Why would you do a better job than, not naming names, but one of the other 4?
Well, I can promise you that I do as good a job, and I think I can do a better job. I don't think that they're doing a bad job at all. I think that change and dialogue is good. It's part of democracy. And if at the end of the day, Todd, Mike, and myself come up short, we've had the 4 aldermen come before the voting electorate, defend their record, and ask why they should, and prove why they should be reelected for another 2-year term.
Fair enough. The mayor's approval rating seems to be hovering in around the 50% mark. That's a made-up number that some pollster came up with, so I repeat it.
I've heard higher, but that must be a sudden dip.
Well, you know, it's difficult being a mayor of a small city like this. It's difficult because no matter which way you turn, people are saying, don't levy the tax burden on us, come up with other ways for revenue. And when he comes up with other ways for revenue, which is increase in fees, fines, and everything else that he's increased, he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't.
Sure.
But right now, are there areas where the mayor could do better?
Absolutely, and everybody can do mayor. Every mayor can do better. You're talking about Tom Menino, the mayor of Boston, one of the longest-serving mayors in the country, certainly can do better in many areas. I think the mayor can do better in areas of city property. I think there's a lot of underutilized city property that could be condensed and not necessarily sold, but refurbished. We have some far-flung city departments all over the city that could be consolidated. We have an onerous lease with the Tab building that's not Mayor Curtatoni's responsibility. We had it under Mayor Kelly Gabe.
It wasn't his doing.
No, absolutely not.
But it might be his responsibility to take a good hard look at it.
I'm sure he has. I'm sure he has taken a good hard look at it. Right now, that building and that space is very convenient, and people get used to a certain expectation of where things are. And to have an important department like the Council on Aging there, people get used to that. But certainly, you could take a look at city property and city agencies being consolidated in some large measure.
Yeah, and then taking some of that city property and putting it back on the tax rolls.
Absolutely.
Increase revenue. It's all about the books, Sean.
Yes.
It's all about the books. Decrease cost, increase revenue.
I'm usually not a proponent of selling city property, but there is, and I'm sure he's facing both sides of the equation where he has to lower that tax obligation to the homeowners, and certain property, not only would you garner revenue from a sale, but you would garner tax revenue every year. So that you have to walk that fine line.
How about city services? Give it a grade. I won't hold you to it. The public will, but I won't hold you to it.
You know, I'd be honest, I'd say A-, B+. Absolutely.
I will say, in defense, Mayor and I have had our issues, but in defense of our friends who work in the public service sector in this city, that our streets are cleaner than other cities that I go to. Our streets are plowed better than other cities that I go to. I'm not crazy about some of our development methodologies and how it's a little archaic of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board. I would love to see a revamping of that. Professionals brought in on the planning and zoning side of things. My opinion. Let's talk a little bit more about ramifications of development in the city and how it affects our current lifestyle. We're used to living in a city that has buses. We have no trains. We're used to living in a city that has a fairly good track record of financial stability. We've moved away from the days of bankruptcy or over-the-edge brinkmanship. What happens to the Somerville of today once that green line comes in, once Assembly Square gets redeveloped, once Inner Belt gets redeveloped? Do we become nothing more than Cambridge Light?
I don't believe so. No, I think it can only get better. I mean, we're not as widespread as Cambridge. In fact, 4 square miles, we're pretty densely populated and packed. I believe that a thriving Assembly Square district and a thriving Union Square district can only add to the quality of life in all the surrounding neighborhoods.
Yep. You spend a lot of time in your free time. I don't know how you get free time working at the State House, Sean, but...
Well, it's more so with 2 kids that's
there you go. Free time. But you do spend a lot of time with the youth in youth sports.
I do. I've just, for the last 3 years, have been involved in Somerville Little League as a coach and manager, and I was on Little League Baseball and Pony League Baseball when I was a kid, and I love sports, and most all sports. And I enjoy coaching. Both my kids are on the team, and I enjoy coaching their friends. And we had some success this year in the Jimmy Fund Little League All-Stars. Almost made the finals.
There you go.
Yeah.
Boston Closet took a championship.
They
this
did
year,
indeed.
Huh?
We took it on the chin to Boston Closet.
Oh, that Tom Lynch.
Yeah.
Speaking of youth, our education system has taken a couple of hits recently in with our standings in terms of this rating system that was put out. Boston Magazine kind of put us at the bottom of the list. Our MCAS scores are not as good as I think a lot of parents would like to see them. Our graduation rate slipped slightly at Somerville High School. You talk a little bit about the Board of Aldermen only works with the school committee via the Board of Aldermen president, who has a seat on the school committee. But how would the Board of Aldermen help to effectuate change within the school system?
Well, I think the Board of Aldermen can talk to as many parents as a school committee member can. And I believe that we've made strong progress at the high school level. I think that our pre-K to 3rd grade is a model of any community across the state, especially the Capuano Early Education Center. I was the vice president of the PTA there. They were lauded and still are. I think we have some problems in the middle school. I see charter schools as being a big problem. Poaching the Somerville Public School, communities like Somerville, the public school system, that I think is our biggest challenge, is retaining people in the public school system to make it better from within, instead of people going to private schools and charter schools.
Mm-hmm. When we talk about, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Somerville education system, or the Somerville school system, is still one of the few public education systems that has the breakfast program still in place. And that's something, that a lot of communities cut right off the bat. When tough times started to hit 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they cut those programs. So that's, it's something that when you hear people talk about the education system in Somerville, I hear it both ways. I hear younger parents who say to me, I've got 3 kids in school, the teachers are doing the best they can, they can't do it alone, it involves parental involvement. So
Absolutely.
The parents have to be integrally involved in the kids' education. Part of me hears the other side of the story. The horror stories, there weren't enough books for kids, or there was this, or there was that. If you were to grade the Somerville education system, where would you grade them?
Well, I think
Are they
it's
at the top, in the middle, or at the bottom?
I would say in some aspects in the middle and some aspects at the top. I think it's tough to grade the entire school system as a whole. I think you have to look at those 3 segments: the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school. And I think in both the elementary school and the high school, as of late, we've gotten some good marks. Mm-hmm. I don't see a problem in the middle school with facilities or books. I see more of attrition to the public and charter schools, and I think that's the biggest problem we're facing.
We had Jed Lippert on the show. He's the head of Prospect Hill Academy.
Okay.
I'm going to ask him to watch this show.
Please do.
I'll be seeing him Thursday morning for breakfast. Sean, we have probably about 5 minutes left. Why don't you talk about, I've been asking the questions. Do you have anything you brought forward and you want to talk about in terms of your candidacy?
Well, I think that the Board of Aldermen, I can bring a different level of energy, some new ideas, and a fresh approach. And I think that that's a good thing for Somerville. I think that everybody needs a different perspective, and I think that some things get stayed and reluctant to change. And I think it's a good thing to even have this dialogue and this debate. And I thought long and hard about it before I decided to run.
I hope you consulted with the kids and your wife.
I did.
You did?
Yes.
And they said, "Run, Daddy, run."
3 thumbs up.
3 thumbs up from the Fitzgerald
That's
family. Right. On a lighter note, and a more serious note, I guess, lighter and more serious, I know that you stay in touch with former Mayor Dorothy Kelly Gay, and that her husband Bert recently had another medical setback, but I have not spoken to Bert in probably a month and a half. So
Okay.
Is he doing well?
That's about the same time that I spoke to Dorothy, and from what I understand, if you saw, there was an article in the Globe several weeks
I did,
back that
yep.
he is on a miraculous recovery and
Yeah.
cancer-free, and right now is doing fine.
Yeah. So I'll be looking for you at the Independent, Bert. We have a couple of seconds left. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about
Sure.
casino gambling, if I could.
Sure.
If I could. You work in the State House.
Yes.
It was a hot topic.
Still is. The
on-
Senate debated it today.
The Senate got it, but the House of Representatives said, okay, let's move forward with this. Here are
Yes.
our amendments. General feeling in the State House, not yours. General feeling in the State House. Are they pleased with the casino gambling bill as passed by the House? Or is everybody just throwing their hands up saying, this is a farce?
I think they are pleased with it just because it was a 6-month process to really write that bill so that every region and constituency would benefit from it. You're never going to please anybody with a bill like that. Absolutely not. But I think the bill really was looked at in a more favorable light given the economy. And everybody right now is looking at jobs.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at 3 years of successive job loss and looking at the numbers that a resort-style casino can bring to the Commonwealth, I think that in the end caused a lot of legislators to vote for it. There were a lot of legislators that initially opposed it in 2008 and voted for it this time.
We'll switch gears, and you're going to have the last word. If you want to tell the folks at home, you're running for Alderman at Large. Again, my guest is Sean Fitzgerald. He's running for one of 4 seats on the City of Somerville Board of Aldermen, Alderman at Large. All yours, and don't forget to give them your web information.
Once again, I ask for one of your 4 votes for your listening audience in consideration for Alderman at Large. I think I can bring a fresh approach and new ideas to this responsibility, and that's what I intend to do as one of the 4 Aldermen at Large in the city. My contact information is Facebook, www.facebook.com/Fitzgerald, 4, Alderman.
There you go. And we're going to put that up on the Greater Somerville blog. As always, Somerville, remember, stay safe, stay informed, and watch for all of your Greater Somerville episodes on Greater Somerville at WordPress.com. And hopefully you will be able to attend the great debate. All 7 candidates for Alderman at Large will be at the historic Somerville Theater on October 17th. Thanks for watching, and good night.